When my mother looked across the dinner table and told me she had given my inheritance to my younger sister, I did not cry. I did not raise my voice either. I simply placed my fork beside my plate and stared at the woman who had raised me. For a few seconds, the only sound in the room was the soft ticking of the old clock above the kitchen doorway. My sister, Vanessa, kept her eyes on her food. Mother folded her hands and said, "Danielle, please try to understand." I was 36 years old then, a Black American woman born and raised in North Carolina. I worked as an assistant manager at a neighborhood pharmacy, rented a small 2-bedroom apartment, and spent most of my life trying to keep peace in a family that never seemed to notice how much peace cost me. "What exactly am I supposed to understand?" I asked quietly. Mother took a slow breath. "Vanessa needs the money more than you do." That sentence stayed in the room like smoke. Vanessa was 3 years younger than me. Growing up, she had always been the one people protected. If she failed a class, the teacher was too hard. If she lost a job, the manager was unfair. If she borrowed money and did not pay it back, she was simply going through a difficult time. I was different. I was the dependable daughter. The one who arrived early and stayed late. The one who remembered birthdays, paid bills when mother fell behind, and drove across town whenever something broke in the house. People thought being dependable meant you did not need anything. They were wrong. My father had died 6 months earlier after a long illness. He had been a quiet man who worked as a city bus driver for more than 30 years. He was not rich, but he saved carefully. He kept every receipt, repaired things instead of replacing them, and believed that a person should always leave something behind for their children. A few weeks before he died, he held my hand in his hospital room. His voice was weak, but his eyes were clear. "I made sure you girls will be all right," he said. At the time, I did not ask what he meant. Money felt unimportant while I was watching my father struggle to breathe. After his funeral, Mother told us that Dad had left money for both Vanessa and me. She said the bank would contact us when everything was settled. I believed her. Why would I not? She was my mother. For months, I waited without asking questions. I knew grief was heavy on her. I helped her sort through Dad's clothes. I canceled his phone service, organized his medical papers, and sat beside her when the house felt too quiet. Vanessa came by sometimes, mostly on weekends. She would hug Mother, cry for a while, then leave before there was work to do. I never complained. That was how our family worked. Then, on that rainy Sunday evening, Mother invited both of us for dinner. She made baked chicken, green beans, and cornbread. The meal looked normal, but something felt wrong from the moment I entered the house. Mother barely looked at me. Vanessa was unusually quiet. I should have trusted that feeling. After dinner began, Mother cleared her throat and told me she had made a decision. She said Vanessa was behind on her mortgage and might lose her house. Her husband had recently left, and she was struggling to care for her young son. Because of that, Mother had given Vanessa all the money Dad left behind. Not half. All of it. I looked at my sister. "How much was it?" I asked. Vanessa finally lifted her eyes. $80,000. My stomach tightened. I was not angry because Vanessa needed help. I loved my nephew, and I did not want him to lose his home. What hurt was that nobody had spoken to me. Nobody had asked. My father had promised that both his daughters would be cared for, yet my part had been taken away as if it never belonged to me. Mother reached across the table, but I pulled my hand back. "You have a steady job," she said. "You do not have children. You are strong, Danielle. Vanessa has always needed more support." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I asked the question that had been sitting inside me since childhood. "Do you think I am strong because I never needed help or because you never gave me any?" Mother's face changed. Vanessa whispered, "Danielle, don't make this harder." I stood slowly and picked up my purse. "I'm not making anything harder," I said. "I'm finally seeing things clearly." Outside, the rain had grown heavier. I sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel, listening to the water strike the roof. I wanted to cry, but the tears would not come. The next morning, while I was getting ready for work, my phone rang from a number I did not recognize. "Is this Ms. Danielle Brooks?" a man asked. "Yes." "My name is Mr. Harris. I'm the manager at First Carolina Bank. I need to speak with you about your late father's accounts." I almost told him there had been a mistake. Then he said something that made me sit down. "Ms. Brooks, the money your mother gave your sister was not your inheritance." I stopped, breathing for a moment. "What do you mean?" There was a pause on the line. "Your father left something else for you, and according to his instructions, only you are allowed to receive it." The words from Mr. Harris echoed in my mind all the way to the bank. "Your father left something else for you." I could barely focus at work that morning. Every customer seemed to speak from far away, and every minute felt like an hour. Around lunchtime, I told my manager there was a family matter I needed to handle. She looked at my face and nodded without asking questions. First Carolina Bank was only 15 minutes away. It was an old brick building downtown where my father had banked for as long as I could remember. I had been there with him when I was a little girl. He always greeted the tellers by name. When I walked inside, a woman at the front desk smiled politely. "You must be Ms. Danielle Brooks." I nodded. "Mr. Harris is expecting you." She led me to a private office at the end of the hallway. A man in his early 60s stood as I entered. He wore a navy suit and kind eyes behind silver glasses. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said as we shook hands. "Your father was a wonderful man." "Thank you." He invited me to sit before opening a thick file with my father's name printed neatly across the front. "I understand there has been some confusion regarding your father's estate." I gave a tired smile. "That's one way to describe it." Mr. Harris looked at me carefully. "Before we continue, I need to verify your identity." After checking my driver's license, he unlocked a small metal drawer and removed a sealed envelope. My father's handwriting covered the front. "For my daughter, Danielle." The moment I saw those words, my eyes filled with tears. "I haven't seen his handwriting since he passed," I whispered. Mr. Harris slid the envelope toward me. "Your father instructed us to give this to you only after we confirmed your identity. He was very clear about that." With shaking hands, I opened it. Inside was a single letter. "My sweet Danielle, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer here to tell you these things myself. First, I need you to know how proud I have always been of you. You carried burdens that were never yours, and you did it without asking for praise. I saw every sacrifice you made for our family, even when others didn't. Tears rolled down my cheeks before I could stop them. My father had noticed. He had always noticed." I continued reading. "I love both my daughters, but I also know life has not been fair to you. Your kindness has often been mistaken for endless strength. Never let anyone convince you that your value comes from what you can give away." I wiped my eyes and looked at Mr. Harris, who quietly waited without interrupting. "There is more," he said gently. He opened another folder. "Your father had 2 separate plans." I frowned. "My mother only mentioned one." "Yes," he replied calmly. "The first account contained $80,000. It was a joint account with your mother. Legally, she became the owner after your father's passing. She was free to do with those funds as she chose." My heart sank. "So she didn't actually steal my inheritance?" "No," he answered. "That money became hers by law." I let out a slow breath. Part of my anger softened, but another part remained. She had still chosen to give everything to Vanessa without even speaking to me. Mr. Harris placed another document on the desk. "However, this is completely separate." It was a trust agreement. Across the top were the words, "The Danielle Brooks Family Trust." I stared at the page. I don't understand." "Your father established this trust almost 8 years ago. It names you as the sole beneficiary." I looked at the amount listed on the final page. My hands froze. It wasn't millions of dollars. It wasn't some unbelievable fortune. It was $195,000, enough to change my life, enough to buy a home, enough to finally stop worrying every month. I never knew, I whispered. Mr. Harris smiled gently. Your father wanted it that way. Did my mother know about this? He paused before answering. According to our records, no. Your father specifically instructed the bank not to discuss this trust with anyone except you after his death. I looked down at my father's signature. For the first time since losing him, I felt as if he were sitting beside me again. He had known. He had understood exactly how our family worked. Before I left, Mr. Harris handed me one final envelope. There's another letter, he said. Your father asked that you read this one only after today's meeting. I thanked him, placed both envelopes carefully in my purse, and walked outside. The afternoon sun had finally broken through the clouds. As I stood on the sidewalk, my phone began to ring. It was my mother. For several seconds, I simply watched her name appear on the screen. Then I answered. Danielle, she said nervously, can you come by tonight? There's something I need to tell you. I looked back at the bank building. She had no idea that I had just learned my father had left behind one final secret. And somehow, I had the feeling tonight's conversation was about to change everything. I almost drove straight home. Part of me wanted to ignore my mother's call and spend the evening alone with my father's letters. I needed time to understand everything that had happened. But another part of me knew I would not sleep if I kept wondering what she wanted to say. By 7 o'clock, I was standing on my mother's front porch. The porch light was already on, and through the front window I could see her pacing across the living room. When she opened the door, she looked older than she had just the night before. Thank you for coming, she said softly. I stepped inside without saying much. The house still smelled like my father's coffee. His favorite recliner sat in the same corner, untouched since the day he died. Seeing it made my chest ache. Vanessa was already there. She stood as I walked in, twisting her wedding ring around her finger even though her husband had moved out months ago. I'm glad you came, she whispered. I nodded politely but remained standing. Mother motioned toward the couch. Please sit. After a long silence, she folded her hands together. I've been thinking about what you said last night. I waited. When you asked if you were strong because I never helped you, her voice cracked. That question hasn't left my mind. I looked down at the floor. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Mom. I know. She wiped away a tear. The truth is, I've leaned on you your whole life because I knew you wouldn't let me fall. Her words stung because they were true. When I was 16, I worked weekends to help pay the electric bill after Dad injured his back. When I was 22, I delayed finishing college so I could care for my grandmother after her stroke. When I was 30, I emptied nearly all my savings to repair my mother's roof after a storm. I had never asked for those sacrifices to be noticed, but I had hoped they would be remembered. Mother looked at Vanessa. I spoiled your sister. Vanessa lowered her head. I know. No, Mother continued. You don't know. Every time she made a mistake, I rushed to fix it. Every time Danielle succeeded, I expected her to handle everything on her own. The room fell quiet. Finally, Vanessa looked at me. I'm sorry. It was the first genuine apology I had ever heard from her. I shouldn't have accepted all that money without asking how you felt. I studied her face. She looked exhausted, not defensive, just ashamed. I kept telling myself I needed it more, she admitted, but deep down I knew Dad wanted to take care of both of us. I took a slow breath. I don't blame you for needing help. She nodded. I know, you blame us for deciding your future without you. Exactly. Before anyone could speak again, my phone vibrated. It was another call from Mr. Harris. I excused myself and stepped onto the back porch. Ms. Brooks, he said, I'm sorry to bother you at home. Is everything okay? Yes, I simply realized I forgot to mention one important detail regarding your father's trust. I listened carefully. Your father also placed one condition in writing. A condition? Yes. He asked that before any funds are released, we deliver one final document to you tomorrow morning. I frowned. What kind of document? I'm afraid I can't discuss its contents over the phone. After thanking him, I ended the call. As I turned back toward the kitchen window, I saw my mother sitting at the table with her face buried in her hands. She looked broken. For the first time in years, I stopped seeing only the mother who had disappointed me. I also saw an elderly widow grieving the man she had loved for 40 years. When I walked back inside, she looked up. Was everything all right? Yes. She hesitated before speaking. Danielle, if I could go back, I would have handled everything differently. I believed she meant it. Still, some wounds were too fresh to disappear in one evening. I forgive you, I said quietly. Both Mother and Vanessa looked up in surprise. But forgiveness doesn't erase pain. Tears filled Mother's eyes again. I understand. I picked up my purse. I need time. She stood and wrapped her arms around me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. When I finally pulled away, I kissed her forehead and walked toward the front door. As I reached my car, I remembered the second envelope my father had left for me. I had not opened it yet. Sitting behind the steering wheel under the glow of the streetlight, I carefully unfolded the letter. The first line made my heart stop. Danielle, if you're reading this, then the time has come for you to learn why I created your trust in secret, and why I never told anyone about the family land. I stared at the page. Family land? My father had never mentioned owning any land. Slowly, I turned the page, realizing that another chapter of my father's life and my own was only beginning. I stared at the email for a long time. $2.4 million. Just seeing the number made my heart race. It was more money than I had ever imagined having. I could pay off every debt, buy a home, retire my mother if she ever needed help, and still have enough to build a comfortable future. But then I remembered my father's words. Don't let anyone rush you into a decision. So I didn't answer the email. Instead, that Saturday morning, I drove to the property for the first time. The old farmhouse stood exactly as it had in the photograph. The white paint had faded, and the porch leaned slightly to one side, but it still had character. Tall oak trees surrounded the house, and a gentle breeze moved through the grass. I closed my eyes and smiled. For the first time since my father passed away, I felt close to him again. I slowly walked across the land, imagining him standing there years ago, dreaming about my future. Every step reminded me that he had believed in me long before I learned to believe in myself. As I reached the back of the property, I noticed a small wooden bench overlooking a quiet pond. Attached to the bench was a brass plaque. For Danielle, never forget that your worth has nothing to do with what people take from you. It has everything to do with who you choose to become. Dad, the tears finally came, not tears of heartbreak, tears of peace. I sat there for nearly an hour, talking to my father as if he were sitting beside me. I understand now, I whispered. You weren't trying to leave me money. You were trying to leave me confidence. A week later, I invited my mother and Vanessa to meet me at the farmhouse. Neither of them had ever visited the property before. Vanessa looked around in amazement. I can't believe Dad kept this secret. Mother quietly wiped away tears. He loved surprises, she said with a small smile. We spent the afternoon cleaning the porch together. No one argued. No one blamed anyone. For the first time in years, we simply worked side by side as a family. During lunch, Vanessa looked at me. I've been thinking a lot. I waited. I'm going to repay the money Mom gave me. I shook my head. You don't have to. Yes, I do. She smiled sadly. It was never really about the money. She reached across the table and held my hand. I spent too many years letting everyone rescue me. It's time I learned to stand on my own. I squeezed her hand. I'll help you if you need advice. She laughed softly. I know you will. But this time, I need to do the work myself. I had never been prouder of my little sister. A month later, I politely declined the developer's offer. Instead of selling immediately, I hired professionals to restore the farmhouse and care for the land while I considered its future. Some people told me I was making a mistake. Others said I should take the money before the market changed. Maybe they were right, maybe they weren't, but for once, the decision belonged to me. Not fear, not pressure, not guilt, me. I also made another decision. Every Sunday afternoon, my mother came to the farmhouse for dinner. Sometimes Vanessa and my nephew joined us. We cooked together, laughed together, and slowly rebuilt the trust we had almost lost forever. Healing didn't happen overnight. There were still difficult conversations. There were still moments when old hurts resurfaced, but love became stronger than pride. One evening, my nephew ran across the yard chasing fireflies. He looked at me and shouted, "Aunt Danielle, this is my favorite place." I smiled. "It might become yours someday." His eyes grew wide. "Really?" "Maybe," I laughed. "If you promise to take good care of it." "I promise." Watching him run back across the field, I realized my father had accomplished exactly what he hoped. He hadn't simply left behind land. He had brought his family back together. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see during those painful days. The greatest inheritance my father left me was never the trust account. It wasn't the farmhouse. It wasn't even the land worth millions of dollars. It was the quiet reminder that being overlooked does not mean you are unloved. Sometimes the people who say the least are the ones who see us the most. My mother eventually admitted her mistakes. My sister chose responsibility over dependence, and I finally stopped measuring my worth by how much I sacrificed for everyone else. Today, whenever I sit on that old wooden bench by the pond, I read my father's message one more time. Your worth has nothing to do with what people take from you. Those words changed my life, because real inheritance is not measured by dollars, houses, or land. It is measured by the love, wisdom, and faith that remain long after the people we love are gone. And that is one treasure no one can ever take away.